Islanders, Epeli Ha'ofa really, in a way, transformed our thinking, pointing out that we are the sea and we are the ocean, and Oceania is us. And I think he brings up the best point that we must wake up to this ancient truth and together use it to overturn all hegemonic views that aim ultimately to confine us physically and psychologically. And of course, that's crucial, especially with the COVID crisis. We can see how all the challenges are interconnected, as well as the climate challenge. And it's time for us to create things for ourselves to establish standards of excellence that match those of our ancestors. So I think that was definitely one important point to raise for us to think as we move forward, as well as honor Ambassador Otto from Palau. And he did an amazing job hosting us when the Malama Honua voyage of the Pacific Voyaging Society in Okulea came there up in the East River and hosted that World Oceans Day event. And we really think that what's important about this is he also played a huge role with SDG 6 on the right to water. Two principles we're also bringing up is solidarity and subsidiarity. And we think those can guide us in our work in Oceania. And it's also exciting is to recognize the role of Oceania and the Pacific at the UN Voluntary National Reviews and the high-level political forum. Samoa really did kick us off in 2016, and again just this year. Kiribati in Australia in 2018. And then last year was the year that really you see the Pacific wake up and have a huge role with Fiji, Tonga, Vanuatu, and Aotearoa presenting, as well as Chile and France. And there we were able to partner beginning with Rapa Nui with their voluntary local review and Kanaki, New Caledonia with France. And it's exciting when you look at what's going on, because if we look at what's happening, this is a new time. This year, it's Samoa for the second time, being the first Pacific island to go twice. The Federated States of Micronesia and Papua New Guinea have all done their VNRs, and Solomon Islands will be later today. And already next year, Marshall Islands and Tuvalu will be signing up. Really, 2019 was the Blue HLPF, and we look forward to continuing that tradition. Last year, Pacific Island Forum really led the way by bringing journalists from every country being reviewed, but also having an event just like this one today that we're participating in. And really, I think that's where we see some of the innovation. Two innovations from Oceania and the Pacific I'd like to share. One was Vanuatu last year. They did a peer VNR with other Pacific Island countries prior, bringing people from Fiji, bringing people from their neighbors in Oceania to really look at their report and see how they did. And also this year, Samoa hosted the first ever Committee on the Rights of the Child treaty body review outside of Geneva and the Palais des Nations. So there's a lot going on, and Hawaii has been part of that Pacific view. And we will now move into sharing and talking about the Hawaii Voluntary Local Review Lab. And it's an honor for me to introduce Celeste Connors, the Executive Director of the Hawaii Green Growth Local 2030 Hub, who will moderate our program. Celeste previously served at the White House National Security Council and National Economic Council as the Director for Climate Change and Environment, where she helped shape the administration's climate, economic, and energy policies, including the Sustainable Development Goals. I'd like to welcome and honor Celeste and also all of our speakers. And thank you so much for joining us around the world for this moment in Oceania. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Josh, and aloha to all of our colleagues on the call today. And thank you for those that are joining us quite early and those later in the afternoon. It's really a pleasure to be with you here today. But before we kick things off, I would like to actually invite our colleague, Kalani Kana'a, to provide an opening protocol. Kalani is the Director of Hawaiian Cultural Affairs and Natural Resources for the State of Hawaii's Tourism Authority. Kalani, can I please invite you to ground us today?
Thanks so much, Celeste. Velina nui o ke aloha ia o ko pakahi a pau mai kahikihi a kahikihi aku o ka honua nei. Greetings to all of you in whatever corner of our earth, our island earth that you're in. I'd like to offer an oli or a chant this morning, but would like to invite each of you to, in your hearts, find a place that grounds you, that gives you energy, that recharges you, and really centers you. And I'd invite that energy into our meeting today as I share this oli. Mo kua ela kapavokeo, kamakalai ihi o kailua, au akula o la lai ka ehu kai, kani kapahu kapu o kuali, Lili I ka apua kia I molani e. O lali mai nā vai ka ili kai. I ke kai wili au a kana loai. Upapu mai lau ahiki. Noho ke aka I ka wainui. E I lau hoi ka hoi koa. O ka hoi o ka hia ke aloha. Ua I ke aloha.
Aloha. Mahalo, Kalani. Thank you. We look forward to really an exciting program and to hearing more from Kalani later in our program. First, I just actually want to go through some housekeeping so everybody understands how to interact best. We have a full session. It will be recorded and shared following the event. And we kindly ask that you remain on mute during the program, but we invite you to use the chat box and encourage you to use the chat box liberally. Send in your discussion comments and resources, links to the chat box. Resources and bright spots can be shared by participants, and these will be captured and circulated with the session recording. And if you encounter any technical issues, please message session host directly in the chat box, and a member of our team will assist you. We're delighted to be here with partners from across the Pacific and the world to discuss the importance of local leadership to achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals. As Josh shared, we will begin today's program with Hawaii's Voluntary Local Review Lab with Hawaii's leaders, followed by engaging nationals and international perspectives and partners, and a series of presentations from the Pacific Island Voluntary National Reviews. We're really delighted to be launching Hawaii's first statewide voluntary local review, along with cities and fellow island economies that Josh mentioned. And to provide the first context for the first part of our program, Hawaii will be releasing our first state-level voluntary local review in September in advance of the UN General Assembly. This will be also the 6-year anniversary of the Aloha Plus Challenge, our local framework to deliver on the UN Sustainable Development Goals that was launched in 2014. The Aloha Plus Challenge is led by the governor, county mayors, state legislature, businesses, and civil society partners, and actually led to Hawaii's recognition as a local 2030 hub in partnership with the UN system. So Hawaii is working with other island economies to develop locally and culturally appropriate action to achieve the SDGs. Further, we're working with other island partners around the world through the Local 2030 Island Network. Hawaii's model is grounded in a legacy of systems thinking and indigenous knowledge and island values, and was actually inspired by island leadership from the Pacific and around the world, starting with the Micronesia Challenge, and a call to action by our island partners to join them in developing a sustainability model that could be shared. Hawaii's VLR built on ongoing stakeholder engagement with over 50 convened meetings per year with our network, and the development of an open data platform, the Aloha Plus Dashboard, with local metrics and indicators based on what matters to our partners in our community. This measures our local progress with year-to-year trends to provide benchmark data that can inform a green growth recovery from COVID and guide sustainable pathways to meet the 2030 agenda. The dashboard is supported by the state and counties with the Hawaii Environmental Funders Group and other sponsors and network partners, so we thank them for their support. And our counties have taken this further by launching county-level Aloha Plus dashboards to engage citizens and households in taking action, tracking progress that roll up to the global goals. So Hawaii's counties and state agencies are leading incredible efforts to drive action to support our communities, build resilience, and withstand future shocks. Lastly, a key part of our network are students, our next generation leaders. The Aloha Plus Students Summer Cohort is working to engage their peers virtually with a creative media challenge to take action and share their perspectives and ideas on achieving Hawaii's goals and integrating this into broader educational curriculum. So it is now my pleasure to kick off our formal program and invite Casey Brown, the Vice President for Policy and Strategic Initiatives at the UN Foundation, to share her thoughts on the SDGs, and especially against the backdrop of COVID, recent social justice movements, and local action. Aloha, Casey.
Thank you so much, Celeste. Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much again for the opportunity to participate in this really important event. Today we are celebrating Island's leadership and commitment to the SDGs and Hawaii's pioneering work in preparing this first statewide voluntary local review. It's this effort, it's a culmination, as Celeste said, of years of locally driven innovation and partnership. And I really want to especially highlight the ongoing work of the Aloha Plus Dashboard, which is a crucial innovation for tracking local SDG progress. And it really is a bright spot nationally and internationally. So thank you so much for all of that work. As Joshua laid out, it is wonderful that the discussions that's happening right now is taking place alongside the UN High-Level Political Forum this year, where so many critical conversations are occurring that are needed to advance our collective understanding and the roadmaps, and was raised earlier, the solidarity needed to drive progress and action toward responding and recovering in this global pandemic and toward sustainability, and the vital role that the SDGs play as a framework and an approach to our response and to recovering and building back better. So just a few words of context. I think 6 months ago when we rolled out of bed and it said, hello, happy new year in 2020, we knew then that this was going to be a springboard year for the SDGs, launching this decade of action to deliver for progress and to accelerate progress and impact. And we knew then that we had work to do to address a slowing global economy, stalling poverty rates, climate risks being more pressing than ever, and inequalities within and among countries, including gender inequality and systemic racism. And with that was a general recognition that bolder, more transformative approaches and solutions to tackling these challenges were needed at the local, national, and regional level. And then COVID hit, leading to a health, humanitarian, economic, and development crises of proportions that, I really think few of us could have imagined, and it's uncertain what the future holds. But last week, the UN released its annual SDG progress report for 2020. And if you hadn't had a chance to scan it, I urge you all to do so because it has some really important data points about where we are today and what the future might hold. 2020 is likely to see the first increase in global rates of extreme poverty in over 2 decades. We have food insecurity at historic highs. Over 90% of children are affected by school closures. And the International Labor Organization warns that 200 million people could end up permanently unemployed. The consequences we know are acutely felt at the local level and in island communities. In Hawaii, for example, extreme loss to tourism, rising unemployment, and uncertain food systems and supplies threaten these economic and social gains that have been made in recent years. But while the nature of the challenge is daunting, this is also forcing these new approaches, innovations, and commitments about response and recovery that's very much rooted in the Sustainable Development Goals. And the UN and the UN Foundation are strong supporters of the power of local action and island leadership to achieve these goals. As part of that, the Local 2030 Islands Network, launched last year and where I'm proud to serve as the interim steering committee member, works to bring these island communities like yourselves from around the world to advance and really celebrate locally driven, culturally informed solutions. Hawaii is demonstrating just how to translate this universal SDG framework to the local level and make it something that really matters and is relevant for its communities and its citizens. And we know too that island communities are re-examining now their approach to tourism for a greener and more sustainable future when recovery and reopening occurs. It's these types of innovations and partnerships that are needed. It's going to be the source of solutions, innovations, and approaches that's going to help us recover better from this pandemic and to build a more sustainable world for our future. And where I think I see a few of you students, are going to be leading us for the path forward. So I really want to thank you for this opportunity, for being leaders on the SDGs in your communities, in the Pacific, and globally. Thank you so much.
Mahalo, Casey, for sharing that perspective. We're delighted to partner with you and the UN Foundation on our efforts in Hawaii. And it is now my pleasure to introduce Hawaii State Senator Kalani English to talk about how the Hawaii State Legislature led in the launching of the Aloha Plus Challenge in 2014 and his subsequent leadership on introducing climate, energy, and sustainability legislation. Aloha, Senator English. We'll make sure that, Senator English, you're on mute. Let's unmute you.
There you go.
There you are. Thank you.
Okay. Aloha, everybody. It's a pleasure to speak with all of you at today's UN High-Level Political Forum side event with Hawaii, Pacific, and national and international colleagues. Hawaii's been a strong leader on the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals since the inception of the ideas, and we work primarily through the Aloha Plus Challenge and other partners in the region in Hawaii to localize the goals and localize the 17 SDGs and give it meaning to our local community. We're very proud to be preparing the very first statewide voluntary local review, which will be released in September at the UN General Assembly at the 75th GA. The voluntary local review will be built on Hawaii's Aloha Plus Dashboard, which has been tracking the progress towards the global SDGs with community-driven metrics for the last 6 years. The state legislature launched the Aloha Plus Challenge through a unanimous resolution, which was SCR 69 in 2014, and I'd like to add that that was a resolution that I introduced. And it's been a strong collaboration between the state, the local governments, the 4 counties, businesses, civil society, the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, and other actors and players within Hawaii. Since then, the Aloha Plus Challenge has been recognized by our local and culturally based, recognized by the government as a locally and culturally based organization that's helping us to achieve the UN 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. This reflects Hawaii's rich history of sustainability and systems thinking from the ancient Polynesians that came here and our ancestors, and helps us to build a value-based approach to achieving the goals based on Hawaii's unique systems. The Senate has utilized the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals for the last number of years as the framework for our collective work in creating a legislative program. So it has bipartisan buy-in. That means the entire Senate gets together and we discuss the issues that we would like to challenge, and then we crosswalk them over to the SDGs. So we develop a little program like this, and inside we have the goals that we would like to achieve and crosswalked over to each of the SDGs. We publish this so that the public has an idea of how we will be looking at all of the bills moving forward through this particular lens. It's been a very unifying factor for us in the Senate and has helped us to articulate the local challenges and local responses to issues that we face through the lens of the SDGs. Some of the things that the legislature has done is, of course, you may know that we passed a bill that basically allows Hawaii to accede to the Paris Agreement. So the state of Hawaii has adopted the Paris Agreements as local law, and this gives us the local legal framework to begin moving forward and to implement parts of the goals locally. One second, let me just see. I think I have about a minute more. Okay. We do look forward to today's discussion and the release of the voluntary local review this September, and to continue to collaborate, sorry, it's been early morning, closely with our local colleagues from across the Pacific and around the globe to advance the 17 SDGs. We have been working very closely with our regional partners, and I think it's serendipitous that Hawaii is also hosting the 13th Festival of the Pacific Arts, which was to be held in June of this year, but due to the pandemic, we have postponed it, and it'll be the 6th through the 16th of June, 2024. But with this postponement out for years, we're able to integrate our interactions with the Pacific, and also to integrate the SDGs into our work. So with that, I'd like to say thank you to everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, and we look forward to unveiling the voluntary local reviews at the General Assembly in September. Mahalo.
Thank you, Senator English, also for your leadership. I'm now very pleased to hand the floor back to Kalani, Director of Hawaiian Cultural Affairs and Natural Resources at the HTA, and he grounded us with a powerful opening protocol, and we would now like to hear his views on how the state of Hawaii and the tourism industry in particular is looking to build back better. Aloha, Kalani.
Thank you. Aloha, everyone, again. At the Hawaii Tourism Authority, I think it's been a really dynamic time. We've seen record growth up until COVID. And if I could get the next slide, please. Hawaii in 2019 welcomed over 10 million visitors to the state of Hawaii, 17 billion in revenue, 240,000 jobs supported by the industry. But it took its toll. We understood that management of the destination had to be holistic. Next slide, please. And we saw that there were tourism hotspots. There were these places where communities were not accepting of the pressures from tourism in very small communities, very rural communities. And it just led to flashpoints like this that really put a really bright hot light on what we have to focus on. And I'd say that that's really ultimately a holistic management plan for tourism moving forward. Next slide. And then, of course, we had COVID happen. And now we see that our tourism economy virtually collapsed. It was down 99% last month alone. Along with it, all the revenue and jobs it supports. But it really gave us, again, another reminder of how fragile and susceptible to outside forces tourism can be. And when we rely on it as our economic driver, we have to be resilient for moments like this, whether it had been a hurricane or other things. We really needed to think about that. Next slide, please. And what I think happened is, we felt a lot of this pressure coming forward, and our Hawaii Tourism Authority board actually back in January of this year passed a new strategic plan for the next 5 years. And predicated in that plan was a tectonic shift in focus toward these 4 pillars. The first and foremost being natural resources, the second, Hawaiian culture, the third leg being community and its well-being, and then lastly, our brand marketing to create travel demand to the Hawaiian Islands. And I think what this represents is, again, not only a shift in thought leadership from the Tourism Authority that was built on community feedback and community outreach, but I really think it was the impetus for us to consider things like regenerative tourism, where we're doing no harm. And then we're actually improving and reinvesting in our communities, improving the quality of life for our residents, and then enhancing the visitor experience. And I think if we look in the context of COVID and a post-COVID green recovery and helping us to achieve our sustainable development goals, tourism can really be the catalyst for that. We recognize that we have some really immediate needs that we need to meet for our residents, and that's going to take reopening the industry in a safe way, and we're going to have to find that balance. And the other hull to that double-hulled canoe, if you will, is that long-term transformational aspect of the industry, moving toward a more regenerative and resilient industry that benefits more equitably all the people of Hawaii. How do we sort of reinvent the tourism product that we do have? How do we build in community-based nonprofits who are doing a lot of restoration work? And, oftentimes their biggest needs are cash and labor to do this work. And so I can imagine a world where a visitor coming to Hawaii wants to give back, wants a really unique experience, and then we put them to work. And they go and restore a watershed in Kahiki Nui, perhaps. Or maybe they're restoring a traditional Hawaiian fish pond in He'eia. And those are ways that, one, they can give back, but two, that actually help make us more resilient in our food production, help us protect our watersheds, and really to invest in a green workforce that shifts some of those jobs toward new areas where they're not completely tourism dependent. And so Again, those are long visions. That's the long-term plan. But I think what we've sort of been awakened to, or our consciousness has been awakened to, is that we have to be more regenerative and resilient. And again, our board did that. Another action that I think has happened recently is the Hawaii Tourism Authority Board adopted the Aina Aloha Economic Futures Declaration and its 4 principles, which really align quite well with the strategic plan. And then lastly, I'd like to say that the strategic plan is unique because it's also the first time that the HTA, the Hawaii Tourism Authority, has included the SDGs and the Aloha Plus Challenge in its formal strategic plan, as well as then moving it forward into key performance indicators that we hold our contractors and partners accountable for as we move forward. So it really brought a great alignment from a global level right down to a local level as we partner with community organizers as well as our contractors. So that's kind of what we're doing in our neck of the woods, and mahalo for this opportunity to share.
Mahalo, Kalani, and recognizing it is a very challenging time in your industry and the way that you're thinking innovatively around how we can move forward based on what people were previously doing and recognizing is very significant. I would now like to actually introduce and welcome our city and county partners to discuss the important work that they're doing at the local level. I'll introduce them all together and then actually ask Josh to kick us off. So Josh Stanbro is Honolulu's Chief Resilience Officer and serves as the Executive Director of the Office of Climate Change, Sustainability, and Resiliency in Mayor Caldwell's administration. Riley Sato serves as the Deputy Director of the Department of Research and Development at the County of Hawaii. Makalea Ane serves as the Environmental Coordinator for Maui, and Ben Sullivan is the Energy and Sustainability Manager for Kauai. So Josh, I'd like to invite you to share more about the work that the City and County of Honolulu is doing to address climate change, sustainability, and resilience. Aloha.
Aloha, Celeste. Aloha kākou and talofa lava to everyone on this important call. You know, Hawaii sits in the middle of many worlds. Oceania, we're a small island state. We've got a profound colonial history here that we have struggled with. And now as part of the U.S., we struggle with some new constraints. And through all of that, I think the local governments and Mayor Caldwell and the City and County of Honolulu have been champions of climate resilience and sustainable development in partnership and in league with all of you at the UN. Mayor Caldwell was proud to announce and kick off the pledge to do a voluntary local review at the U.S. Conference of Mayors about 1 year ago, and at the Climate Mayors Summit, where we had the largest gathering of U.S. mayors focused on climate ever. We had 58 mayors focusing on what cities can do in conjunction with the Paris Climate Agreement and the UN to make sure that the rest of the world knows that while much of the U.S. may have disengaged, at least half of us are still here. We're still in, and we want to send that message strongly from Hawaii. So from the state level down through our local government levels, we take the SDGs seriously. We roll them, as Senator English was showing, into our documents and into our law and policy. This resilience strategy for the City and County of Honolulu was built with a ton of community input, but every single action in there is linked directly to a sustainable development goal. It's linked to an Aloha Plus category, and they're coded as such so that we can hold ourselves accountable, not only with the policies that we do, but then with the VLR process that we're going through right now. We are all in terms of the Paris Agreement. All 4 counties that you'll hear from endorsed it within, I think it was 5 days of President Trump pulling out. And so you had the governor of Hawaii, you had the legislature, and led with Senator English, passing an ordinance, a bill that essentially said we're still in the Paris Agreement, and all 4 mayors committing at the same time. We've got a 100% clean energy goal by 2045 that has been passed at the state level. Subsequently, embraced by the counties. We have a 100% clean energy transportation goal endorsed by the mayors and subsequently being endorsed at the state level piece by piece. And what we try to do, I think there's a culture of collaboration in Hawaii that you in the Pacific know well. We try to lead by example, and we quietly to show the path for others. So while we understand shared goals are great, we know that action is where we really need right now, given the climate crisis, given the COVID crisis. So just a couple highlights from the city and county of Honolulu here, the island of Oahu. SDG 14, life below the water. We have some of the worst plastics pollution, ocean pollution anywhere on the globe. We have the most, just last year, we passed the most progressive single-use plastics ban in the United States. And I saw in one of the comments, it said, how do we move to a zero waste model in tourism? Well, how you do that is at the local level, passing progressive single-use plastics ban so that the tourists, when they come, aren't participating in that economy. SDG 13, climate action. Our city joined a handful of others in the U.S. to lead on litigating and suing the fossil fuel companies that have misrepresented the dangers of global warming and what their products have done and the inequalities that has wrought in terms of disparate impact on the most vulnerable populations. SDG 11, sustainable communities. We just passed one of the most progressive electric vehicle laws in the nation. 25% of all stalls on our island will be wired for electric vehicles. 100% of new homes will have solar water heaters. 100% will be photovoltaic panel ready, and 100% of new homes will be electric vehicle ready. So COVID has thrown us a massive challenge, but we know above all that islands are resilient. We innovate, we figure things out, we work closely together. And so we are going to cross the finish line of this administration. And indeed, 2020, as we were told in the beginning, we never knew how important the year 2020 would be, but it has turned to be an incredible pivot point. So we plan to finish strong. So we've got 3 things that we're looking to do before the end of the year here at the city. In line with the Sustainability Development Goal number 10, reducing inequalities, we want to pass an empty homes tax on second homeowners, vacation owners, investment owners. We've got huge disparities between the wealthy with homes that are barely used and a lack of housing. And so basically levying a tax on those empty homes that are just investment properties and then taking those proceeds and developing affordable housing. Sustainability Development Goal 3, good health and well-being. We want to reform our buildings so that they're more COVID healthy, but at the same time more energy efficient. Sustainability Development Goal 8, decent work and economic growth. We're establishing a new Office of Economic Revitalization to pivot from our total dependence on the tourism model, the previous tourism model that Kalani was talking about, and work with HTA to develop a regenerative tourism economy, sustainable agriculture, green energy, and really diversify the economy. So we're disappointed that COVID disrupted the Pacific Festival of the Arts here this year in Honolulu, but we hope that you all will be back here in 2024 when we'll be back. I first went in 1996. It was my introduction to the Pacific, and we welcome all of you to be with us then. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Josh, and congratulations on all of the exciting work that you're leading and in the context of the Pacific and our island partners. With that, I'm going to actually invite Riley to share some of the work that the County of Hawaii is leading. Let's see. Riley, let's make sure that you're not on mute.
Okay.
Let me give it a go. Oh, hey, great. Yes, perfect.
Aloha, everyone. And thank you for this opportunity to listen, learn, and share amongst a very diverse group with a powerful vision that we share. So within Hawaii County, over the past few months, we've completed our greenhouse gas inventory. And we're utilizing that as the benchmark in which we can monitor steps going forward. We've also then developed a draft climate action plan, which we issued to the public for comments. And we're sifting through the comments and modifying the draft toward its final version. Now, with the COVID situation and being resilient and sustainable coming out of it, the interesting part of this pandemic is that it really exposed a lot of vulnerability points within how tourism, our economy, food systems, food production, delivery, shipping, supply chains, all of that was exposed. But in addition, what it also exposed is the level of mobility required in our previous pre-COVID lives that led to greenhouse gas production. And with the shutting down of the airlines, stay-at-home policies, we looked at the actual mobility that was occurring, the open roads, the lack of traffic, and really that showed us at least one of the best situations as far as reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and then taking that and now rebuilding tourism to what and how it can be sustainable, how it can be a partnership of the community with the tourists. So as another step, we're about to issue our tourism sustainability plan, and that I have the final draft in my hand, and we'll be hopefully issuing that on Friday. But it is aligned with what a lot of the elements that Kalani had expressed with the Tourism Authority. This has been done with collaboration, many stakeholders, including the community. We've seen another thing the pandemic has exposed is the healing of our what was called tourism hotspots. The fish have come back, the seaweed has started growing, and the coral is revitalized. And we'd like to somehow manage going forward to maintain that and to allow the tourists to have a place-based experience with our community. And so that the pandemic is very difficult, with the economy, but it exposed how we may transform our behavior and what we do to become more resilient, more sustainable. The actual food system was an interesting, for production where it got shut down, redirected. And so we're actually looking at systems, transforming the systems of food production and movement to ensure that that is beneficial locally, produced locally, consumed locally. The fishing industry got impacted, and looking at how to advance that coming out and being more self-sustaining, more sensitive to that. Another interesting outcome is the need for mobility to and from work. That was shut down. To and from school, that was shut down. And so do we want to go back to a Monday through Friday, bumper to bumper traffic, or can we look at more distance learning, telemedicine, telework? But the problem with that is the actual digital divide that has come out, where a lot of the solutions are online, like we're doing this conference online, but having access to that is a problem in Hawaii County. So we're looking at piggybacking on Wi-Fi on Wheels, which is a DOE-led, bringing out transmitters and Wi-Fi signals to the community through school buses. We're looking at advancing the nonprofits that deliver medical and services, medical products currently, and taking digital access to the community through tablets and allowing them having one vehicle travel and allowing multiple people, the community, to access the digital needs that they have, be it learning, Social Security, SNAP, and other aspects. So in that sense, you actually reduce the amount of traffic, reduce the need to get from point A to point B by having less vehicles, and we're targeting those vehicles to be clean vehicles, zero emission vehicles. And so the pandemic has been very damaging, but it also has really provided a great opportunity to transform.
Mahalo, Riley. No, appreciate that. And some really interesting and very tangible examples. And this is really part of the discussion and how we can learn from each other and what we're doing, just even across our counties. So with that, I would like to actually invite Makalea to share more about what's happening in Maui County.
Hi, aloha. Aloha kakayaka kaku. I'm the environmental coordinator for the County of Maui. And I prepared some slides so that you guys didn't have to look at my mugshot this whole time. So if Brianna wanted to bring those up. So achieving the Sustainable Development Goals through local action. And we do this, as the speakers before me had spoken about, all the counties really do partner together. And we have this environmental sustainable network thingy that we always come together and try to leverage each other's efforts, funding, time. So I'd like to just talk a little bit about some of the stuff that we're doing together, and some of the things that we're doing here in Maui County. So next slide. So we're following suit of the City and County of Honolulu, and we just, this fiscal year, we just launched the Mayor's Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency here in Maui County. So super excited to be second to do it in the state. Hopefully Kauai and Big Island can come on board. And the name of this new office is Ke'ena o Hoholu. And so it just talks about the to be resilient, as this slide shows the Makaloa reed in the estuary. It's deeply rooted in the estuary, but with the ebb and flow of the tide, it bends and sways, but and doesn't break, and it stays rooted and connected to, and pa'aka'aina, connected to the earth, but be able to take the curveballs that are thrown at us. Next slide. So I just wanted to highlight some of the, last year we had 2 organizations from Hawaii win. They were the recipients of the 2019 United Nations Equator Prize. And so this is some of the photos from last year in September when we went up to the UN General Assembly to support them and be so proud of our wonderful communities that had been recipients of this award. So it's Uncle Mac from Molokai, actually. It's part of Maui County. And then another group from Ha'ena, Kauai. And so we're super proud of all the work that they're doing on the ground and really embodying traditional practices, but helping us meet our sustainable development goals. Next slide. And so here in Hawaii, we have a rich tradition, 2,000 years of people living and knowing the Aina and having an ali'i system and a monarch here that had really created laws that we can and had dealt with pandemics and food shortages. And we can really look back and see the things that they had implemented and policies that they had written that can help us inform our actions today. And so one of the small little excerpt from the middle is actually a regulation from Kinau Paki that she wrote to the governor of California in 1839, saying that we had passed a new policy in the islands. And before you boarded a ship to Hawaii, you had to be investigated to see if you had smallpox or other infectious diseases 42 days before you entered that ship. And if while traveling here, you had symptoms and your ship was quarantined before it got into the harbor. So, I mean, we've been dealing with these issues since the 1800s. And we, that's a lot of the policies that are coming out now are mimicking those quarantines before you come to Hawaii. And then another excerpt was taro shortage in the early 1900s. And so this past year, we had a couple different policies that had encouraged taro production that we were hoping to pass in the state ledge that would help with food security here in Hawaii, but also support the sustainable agriculture industry and supporting our staple crop in Hawaii. So hopefully next ledge season we'll get those heard again. Next slide. So some of the local actions that are helping us to meet our sustainable development goals here in Maui County, we fund a lot of different watershed programs and marine environmental restoration programs. So Celeste had mentioned our Ahupua'a system. And so this is the picture on the left is Pu'upukui Watershed Preserve. And that watershed organization is implementing, it's called a treatment train, but really just Ahupua'a management. How do we protect our upper watersheds, keeping ungulates out of conservation areas with fencing, but also implementing other conservation practices on the land to keep sediment on the land from eroding into our pristine marine environments. And then the picture on the right is nature-based solutions. We're just using Pacific oysters to filter out our water in our right now in Ma'alaia Harbor. Next slide. And so these different nature-based solutions and indigenous solutions to climate change can help us meet all these different sustainable development goals. This one here in particular is called a lo'i, and many of you are probably familiar with taro and lo'i. So we're just in Maui, we're trying to take traditional practices and have them talk to science and the Western thinking and say, hey, look, this is lo'i, but this is multi-chamber treatment trains or sediment retention basins. And so saying, look, we have the answer. We can solve this. Instead of putting these cement concreted retention basins, hey, let's actually restore lo'i and feed our people. So the lo'i would capture sediment, feed our people, and then keep that sediment from washing down to the nearshore environment. Next slide. We also promote some of our grantees are fish pond restoration. And so you can see on the left is an old fish pond. I think this is Lanai. But if we promote fish pond restoration, it can help wave action from coming ashore and eroding the shoreline, but also promote food security, job training, help people get back into fish pond restoration and help our economy. And then the picture on the right is all of these little arrows are all these old fish ponds in Molokai. And so they're capturing sediment before it's going into the nearshore environment. But we're also providing a lot of grants to help, some grants, not a lot, I would like to do more, to do restoration and provide food security for that island. And so I'll just run through these next slides really quickly. This was an event in 2018 that we brought up 2,000 people in Honolulu. We welcomed the Hokulea back to the islands during their after their worldwide voyage and then their mahalo sail around to all the different islands. So 2,000 people came up to Honolulu, planted 6,000 trees, I think. And all these flags represent a different species of tree. And so each person took a dibble that corresponded to that flag, went to the flag, and then we blew the poo or the conch shell, and then everybody planted their tree. And so we planted in maybe 2.5 hours, 2.5 acres. So planted a whole forest. And it was an amazing experience. Next slide. The next couple of slides are what this is Josh's City and County of Honolulu's resiliency strategy. So we're going to do the same thing here and leverage the work that they've done and align them with the Aloha Plus Challenge goals and the Sustainable Development Goals. Next slide. And then hopefully Ben can talk about our Maui our dashboards. And so this is our dashboards that all the county has put together to help residents meet our sustainable development goals. And yeah, so thank you.
Mahalo makalea. You've just sort of shared so much, and it actually reminds me of a conversation we also had with our colleagues yesterday about the Sepik River in Papua New Guinea and other places in the Pacific, generally that we need to work to preserve and invest in, because it's actually contributing back to our community, our economy in really important ways, and how that is actually really key and part of a broader, green growth recovery strategy. So mahalo nui. It's now my pleasure to ask Ben Sullivan to share some of the work that's underway in Kauai County. Aloha, Ben.
Aloha, Celeste. And I will note that I was supposed to be done talking about 8 minutes ago, so I will be as brief as I can possibly be. Appreciate the opportunity. It's an honor to be here, and more than that, an honor to represent Kauai as a community. We have tremendous people on this island doing really incredible work. And I'm humbled to be a very small part of all the work that's going on. So Casey mentioned a little bit about tourism dropping off, and just for context, obviously, dropping off completely. Prior to COVID, our island's population was about 2 residents to 1 visitor. So our economy was equally dependent on those visitor numbers. And since that's happened, we have virtually no tourism. And so the good of that obviously is a little bit of a respite, and certainly a reflection on how we relate to tourism. And Kalani, I think, spoke really well to that. But obviously, the economic situation is very dire. And so, one of the things that happened immediately is we had to shut down our farmers markets. Our farmers markets are a way for local farmers to sell their produce, a way for us to kind of move towards local production. And really a critical component of promoting small farming and agriculture per SDG number 2. And because of COVID concerns, the markets were shut down. So here's the farmers not being able to sell. Here's a lot of community members not being able to buy. And the community really sprung into action very quickly. One of the things that was created was what was called the Kapuna Care System. And that was basically a CSA that was stood up overnight to feed over 1,000 of our kapuna directly from farmers, with some subsidies coming from the county to make sure that the funding was there, that the farmers got paid, that the kapuna were fed. Really amazing program. Right in line with that, Mayor Kawakami, at the very beginning, and he's been a rock through this whole thing, has immediately directed our Office of Economic Development to begin looking at recovery strategies. So while the rest of the team was scrambling in terms of emergency response and dealing with a lot of other issues, economic development was focused on what are we going to do in a few weeks and a few months, as we understand that this is going to be a prolonged economic recovery. And if folks want to learn more, for brevity, I will just say go take a look at the site called Kauai Forward. So KauaiForward.com has a lot of information on what we're planning to do for recovery. I will mention really briefly that prior to COVID, we were still in kind of a disaster recovery mode. So I think Kalani actually showed a slide earlier that, if I'm not mistaken, was from Ha'ena or from Wainiha, and that was the Rain 18 floods, the floods we had in April of 2018, which everybody knows everybody from Hawaii knows delivered about 50 inches of rain to a small community in the period of 1 day, 24 hours. The physical devastation was tremendous. Luckily, very, very luckily, there was no loss of life. It shut down the entire section of the island and the highway for well over a year to reconstruct. And it gave us, I think, a prelude to what the conversation is now about rethinking tourism, in that the community looked at what they had after, recognized they needed a better balance, not to eliminate tourism, but to come to a better balance with it. A lot of folks collaborated, led by, with the leadership of Representative Nadine Nakamura, whose district it was, but also tremendous support from the legislative team here on Kauai, and delivered solutions that included some pretty complex navigating of regulations at the state and local level. So parking limitations, a new shuttle, and most importantly, capacity limits on how many people could be out at this really special place on a given day. I can't say enough about that effort, and I think really that's the kind of thing that we need more of, and I think there's a lot of agreement on that. you can't talk about Kauai without mentioning the leadership of KIUC and talking about SDG number 7 and affordable and clean energy. I will really briefly wrap up with this and just say that anecdotally, actually, never mind anecdotally, just there goes my timer. The utility is approaching, at right about 55% renewable energy right now, expecting to be as much as 80% really quickly. One of the things that we have noted that is really shows the value of renewable energy beyond just reducing our greenhouse gas emissions is that the rest of the state has been put in this really difficult position with the refineries and their electricity prices because of their dependence on fuel. And there's this imbalance in the refineries that a lot of people know because we're no longer burning jet fuel. Kauai has been able to avoid that largely because we have such a high percentage of renewable energy. So it's really important for all of us to accelerate our progress in that regard. I could say a lot more, but I really don't want to take more time knowing that we're behind. So really, really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you again, Celeste, and everyone on the call. Aloha.
Mahalo, Ben, for all the work that you and your colleagues are doing, and really exciting, particularly in the energy space. So we always look to you for your leadership and guidance on that. So with that, it's now, I'd like to share a video message from United States Representative Ed Case, who represents Hawaii's 1st Congressional District. And he's leading a lot of critical work, not just for Hawaii, but for the Pacific more broadly. So if I'd like to invite the team to put on Congressman Case's video, please. Thank you.
Aloha, and mahalo for the opportunity to join you on Voices from the Pacific at the United Nations High-Level Political Forum 2020. I regret that I can't join you live and in person for what I know will be an informative and empowering discussion. As U.S. Representative for Hawaii's 1st Congressional District, I am proud to represent a state that has led the way in pursuing implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals and the United Nations 2030 Agenda. Last year, I joined other leaders of Hawaii at our state capitol to sign Hawaii Green Growth's Malama Mandate, committing ourselves to take active steps in implementing the Sustainable Development Goals and accelerate island-led solutions to the pressing global challenges we face. However, in pursuing the Sustainable Development Goals, Hawaii must not go it alone. I often remind my colleagues in Congress that the United States is a Pacific nation, but nowhere is that more obvious and important than in Hawaii. We are a member of the Pacific Ohana and part of an even larger family of islands across the world that are confronting similar challenges with regards to sustainable development. Hawaii is our bridge to the Pacific and to Asia, and we can and should play a dynamic role in engaging and leading, when possible, on issues of shared interest. In Congress, I am proud to have taken an active role in promoting greater U.S. attention to the Pacific Islands. Last year, I co-founded the first ever Congressional Pacific Islands Caucus to serve as the focal point for greater discussion and understanding of the importance of this region, the challenges it faces, and the common interests and values we share. I co-chair this bipartisan caucus with my colleagues Congressman Don Young, Congressman Brad Sherman, Congressman Ted Yoho, and Congressman Ami Bera. Our top priority as a caucus is to advance a comprehensive U.S. foreign policy in the region that is responsive to the challenges faced by the countries and peoples of the Pacific Islands. That foreign policy will be reflected in a bill that we will soon introduce, along with my fellow caucus co-chairs, the Boosting Long-Term U.S. Engagement in the Pacific, or Blue Pacific Act. In naming this bill, I wanted to pay tribute to the concept of the Blue Pacific endorsed by leaders of the Pacific Islands Forum. This shared identity recognizes the challenges we face together and the need for collective action to address and overcome these challenges. Our Blue Pacific Act will tackle issues like maritime security, trade, development, healthcare, education, human rights, the rule of law, environmental protection, and so much more. Yet no foreign policy for the region and the world could be complete without addressing climate change, the single most important issue confronting our Pacific Ohana. That is why the bill includes authorizations for programs that will invest in climate change adaptation and climate-resilient infrastructure to help spur sustainable development in the Pacific Islands. However, we know that sustainable development is not just about hard infrastructure, but is also built on focused investments in people and civil society. Our Blue Pacific Act includes programs to develop people-to-people relationships and promote civil society so that citizens are empowered to speak for themselves and participate in transformative change. I hope that some of the funding authorized to support civil society programs will go towards public-private partnerships tackling climate change and sustainable development like Hawaii Green Growth. Over the past 20 years, islands have really stepped up in the global dialogue on climate change and sustainable development. Part of that is because everyone recognizes that islands and their peoples are on the front lines of climate change. But I also believe that those of us who live on those islands have recognized that we have uniquely powerful perspectives to share about how to live and practice responsible stewardship of this giant island we call Earth in the vast ocean of space. We can underestimate neither the moral power of these island voices nor the moral imperative of speaking out and working together for the future of our homes. I want to thank all of you for being part of this conversation today and for your incredible leadership and service on behalf of our island homes. I am honored to share this space with you all today, and I stand with you in our shared fight for a sustainable future. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Congressman Case, for those remarks, and to his team for sharing that with us today. And it's really powerful what he is doing in DC for Hawaii and the broader Pacific. And so we will now begin or pivot to the next segment of our program on global national Pacific models for voluntary national review and voluntary local review leadership. And we'll hear brief interventions by our colleagues from the City of Los Angeles and the United Cities and Local Governments UCLG group and SDSN, the Sustainable Development Solutions Network. And then we'll take a deeper dive into the VNRs for our island partners. So it's my pleasure to invite Erin, who serves as the Director of Olympic and Paralympic Development in the Office of Mayor of Los Angeles, Mayor Garcetti, on their pioneering efforts to launch LA's first voluntary local review last year. I had the pleasure of being there with Erin in New York when they released their report, and we're really delighted to hear from you today, Erin. Mahalo.
Thank you so much, Celeste. And first, let me thank you to all my friends at Hawaii Green Growth and the whole team. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this event today and this important discussion. And let me congratulate everyone in Hawaii who's been a part of this work and will be a part of this work. The foundation that you have built together through the Aloha Plus Challenge and Hawaii Green Growth is a model for regional cooperation, and it's one that we hope to learn from, mirror in Los Angeles, as we look to bring our communities throughout California into the vision for the future that we want. So as Celeste said, I have the honor to lead the City of Los Angeles' work on the Sustainable Development Goals, as well as how we use them to structure our planning ahead of the 2028 Olympic and Paralympic Games. And I do this on behalf of the Mayor of Los Angeles, Eric Garcetti. And while that seems like a crazy pairing of jobs, SDGs and the Olympics, at its core, my job is really about building partnerships, the partnerships that we need to do big and bold things over the next 10 years. And partnerships are not only a goal in and of themselves as SDG 17 standalone, but they are how we scale process. They're how we hold each other accountable. And when we are struggling, they are how we ask for help. So in LA, we presented our first voluntary local review just about a year ago, as Celeste mentioned, and we simultaneously launched our open SDG dashboard, through which we're reporting our progress on the SDG indicators using local data. I encourage you to visit sdgdata.lamayor.org to learn more, where you'll be able to see that we're now also able to disaggregate data across many SDG indicators and disaggregate that by race and other factors, so that we ensure that we leave no one behind as we plot our path forward towards these goals. But when I asked Mayor Garcetti about the dashboard and our VLR, about putting some of these numbers forward, some of which show where Los Angeles is leading, but some of which show where we may be falling behind, he didn't hesitate. He didn't say no at all. He said, in fact, those gaps are opportunities. They're opportunities to bring more people to the table to help us succeed. They're opportunities for us to build a bigger coalition. And that, I think, is in and of itself the value of doing this work, the value of reporting, whether through a voluntary local review that showcases the work of our city and county colleagues, or the community-based organizations in which we're in partnership, or on a dashboard that continually gives us some transparency into what is working and what might not be. The innovations that we all work toward in city operations and services are very rarely front page news unless they go wrong. But a voluntary local review gives us the chance to bring some of that hard work, the hard work of our colleagues and partners, to a broader audience and helps us build that bigger coalition. So the SDGs give us that common language to do it, where we can share these ideas around waste and water and transportation and housing and wealth and equity. And if coronavirus has taught us anything, it's just how quickly local and regional government has had to respond and can respond to what our communities need. And it also has shown how hungry we are and how much we need the space to learn from one another as we all move to respond and to recover and to thrive. Tying this work to the shared agenda and the common language of the SDGs really brings local action forward into a global community of practice. And that community can celebrate it and learn from it. And in those cases where we need help, they see the opportunity to build a new or a bigger or a broader partnership and hopefully build a bigger table in the process. So thank you again for inviting me to be with you today. And thank you for all of your leadership, Celeste and your team and everyone in Hawaii. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Erin. Thank you so much. And we're so delighted to be partnering with you and colleagues in LA. And it's really now my pleasure to introduce Edgardo Bilski, the Director of Research at UCLG, to share his views on the voluntary local review and local government leadership more broadly. Aloha, Edgardo.
Aloha. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening, for me from Europe. If you can show the presentation, please, that would help us. First of all, I would like to underline that the information I get was to present about what is the experience of UCLG on voluntary local reviews. And this is what you see here is all the voluntary local governance review that we collected all around the world, we and other sources. But I would like to center my presentation today on other two initiatives that we are developing. First of all, UCLG in the framework of the Global Task Force of Local and Regional Governments that gather all the main networks of local and regional governments of the world, present every year to the HLPF a report of local and regional governments that we call toward the localization of the SDGs. And this is important undertaking because try to summarize the contribution of all over the world of local governments to the implementation of the SDGs. The localization movement, as it shows in this report, you can this report from the following link that I have shared with you, so the chat. The report showed that the localization movement is growing, albeit at different pace in all regions of the world. Local regional governments' participation in the reporting process is making progress. In 2020, for the first time in 5 years, LRGs were asked to participate in the voluntary national reviews preparation in more than half of the countries submitting annual reports. However, this is progress to achieve regarding LRG's participation in national coordination mechanisms for the implementation and follow-up of the SDGs. What is particularly impressive is how, over the past years, local and regional governments have been developing groundbreaking experience related to the different dimensions of the SDGs. Regarding the COVID-19 crisis, the local and regional government were in the front lines to answer to the crisis. Innovative local and regional governments developed preemptive response, sharing information of digital tools, promote soft urban mobility alternatives, redesigned urban space, encourage short food circuits, foster sharing, and the development of social economy and community networks based on solidarity. Regarding urban and peri-urban development, the report points out how hundreds of local and regional governments are revising their policies and development plans to mainstream the SDGs, fostering participative approach. LRGs are developing slum upgrading and retrofitting policies, increasingly making the right to adequate housing a prominent element of their agendas. Regarding advancing human well-being, LRG's action contribute to reducing poverty by targeting the people more in need, promoting territorialized food systems, and developing localized health and education policies. Globally, although still insufficient, progress is observed in the participation of women in local political leadership. Regarding the protection of the planet, LRGs play a leading role in combating climate change. More than 10,000 local and regional governments from 135 countries have committed themselves to take measurable action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And the same is regarding resilient policies. More than 9,000 LRGs from 55 countries have adopted disaster risk reduction policies. Regarding sharing economy, LRGs are equally active actors for sharing economic benefits, and their contribution could be important to reactivate local economies in the aftermath of the pandemic. Then, this report concludes with some recommendations. First of all, to galvanize the movement for the legalization of the disease in all of the world, empower local and regional governments to secure the provision of essential services and drive structural change by accelerating the achievement of the 2030 agenda. Then you can look at the report and take important recommendations that we can share with you, and it will be very useful for us to know better what you are doing in the Pacific region. We try to integrate some of the information we get, but more closely working with you will help us to improve the information regarding this region. Thank you very much for giving me the possibility to share with you our initiative.
Mahalo, Edgardo. Absolutely. As I see from some of our colleagues in the chat box, following this discussion, we're going to work with you to make sure we're on the map. All of us in the Pacific, more broadly, working with you to share solutions. So thank you so much for all of your work in this very impressive coalition of local government leadership that you're coordinating. And building on that, it's my pleasure to introduce Carolyn Fox with the Sustainable Development Solutions Network, SDSN. She's the head of the SDN's USA branch, and she's going to share about the work that SDN is leading, and an exciting announcement, I think, earlier this week about a partnership with Esri. We are also working with Esri to migrate our dashboard into that platform next month. So we're delighted to have you with us today. Carolyn, over to you. Aloha.
Aloha, and thank you for the opportunity to join this wonderful conversation. And we at SDSN continue to learn from your thoughtful approach and global leadership on really an innovative way of collaborating towards SDG achievement. So I'm here on behalf of the SDSN, the Sustainable Development Solutions Network, where I lead the SDSN USA Network. We're one of 38 national and regional SDSN networks globally. And I'll jump right in. I think I might have some slides. In an effort to be brief, I'll summarize some of our work and how it can connect to this broader dialogue. So one of the activities that SDSN globally and some of our individual networks, including the USA Network, undertakes is to assess progress towards the SDGs using a series of indices. So our index team globally produces a sustainable development report. The most recent one was actually released just a few weeks ago. And that includes an index, rankings, and an interactive dashboard assessing 166 countries towards SDG progress. We also release an annual World Happiness Report, which it compares measures of well-being across countries globally. And in my view, universal well-being really is the ultimate goal of the SDGs, and an example of how other frameworks are critically relevant to our understanding of SDG progress.
So at the national and regional levels in the U.S., my colleague Elena Lynch leads our effort to produce a cities and state index on the SDGs using data that's comparable at the national level. And then we've heard today a number of examples of subnational or local data efforts that look at SDG and locally relevant indicators towards sustainable development. And some of those are highlighted here. I just like to also point to Carnegie Mellon University that's committed to doing the first voluntary university review, which is an even smaller or different scale than we've seen previously. So I can just, the next slide highlights just the way that we, using a similar methodology across our indexes, can look across scales and try and start to compare progress and better understand where the overlaps are in our work. And this is something that could be expanded more broadly in other, to the local level, which is something we're looking to explore. And I think I'm out of time, but I will say SDG Today is the website for the newly launched real-time data hub in partnership with SDSN, National Geographic, and Esri. So happy to send out that URL via chat as well. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Carolyn. It's all very exciting, and yes, look forward to learning more about that as it's recently announced. So it's now my pleasure to introduce Tony Pippa with the Brookings Institution, where he heads up the Brookings SDG Leadership Cities Network Community of Practice. And I think many of us know Tony because he's been working so hard since actually his role in the Obama administration, along with Casey Brown, in moving the SDGs forward across the finish line. So Tony, I'd like to invite you to share some closing reflections.
Well, thank you, Celeste. I'm really honored to participate today. Many thanks for the invitation. It's been wonderful to listen to all of the event and what's happening in Hawaii. And I just want to offer three real reflections. First, just to offer my congratulations to the state of Hawaii and the state level policymakers in the 4 counties represented here today. I think it's really important to understand that undertaking this voluntary local review, and really a first one of its kind that takes a state level review and integrates it with 4 local level reviews, really puts Hawaii and these 4 counties in the vanguard worldwide. It showcases a real commitment to social, economic, and environmental progress that is going to be necessary as we rebuild and recover and reset from the challenges and problems that we're facing in this era of COVID-19. As Edgardo pointed out, VLRs are an innovation that are now turning into a global movement. It demonstrates how important local action and local accountability are to making progress on urgent global issues, like the interrelated issues of the health and economy and economic resilience that have been exposed by the pandemic. And it's interesting to think, first, that state and local governments aren't really official signatories to the SDG agreement. So taking the goals, targets, metrics that were set at the national and global level, applying them to the local level takes investment of time and resources. We heard about that from Aaron. But I think it demonstrates a level of commitment that's really to be lauded in the state. And to this end, the Aloha Plus Challenge really provides a strong basis and a model for others, and especially the data dashboard and the innovative micro dashboards that measure progress on the Aloha Plus goals. This is a model that I think is getting a great deal of interest from other cities and local governments worldwide about how they might learn from that and replicate what Hawaii is doing. And me personally, I'm particularly excited about Hawaii's plans to integrate the reviews of its counties and cities within the statewide review, because I think that really offers the opportunity to showcase how powerful it is to when you can align objectives and priorities across different levels of governance. Secondly, I want to highlight the importance of Hawaii's engagement in regional and global cooperation on this particular agenda. It's important that you're even doing this event and this conversation today. Hawaii has really been demonstrating American global leadership by engaging with counterparts in the Pacific and across the world, offering its experiences, learning from others, engaging through its commitments. Celeste, you have often talked to me about how the SDGs reflect the thinking of an island economy and the necessity of thinking in a holistic manner and noticing the cycles and circles throughout which resources move and how we need to think about that to be sustainable, what sustainable development really is, and the history and legacy and the culture that Hawaii brings to this. And committing to work on this with other partners across borders is, I think, to be lauded. And it's especially relevant in an environment in which the US is the only country that is a member of the OECD and the G20 that has not submitted or committed to a voluntary national review. I think it's a unique honor for Hawaii to serve as a UN Local 2030 hub, to work with other island counterparts in a collective manner on these issues. You've been a vigorous participant in the Brookings SDG Leadership Cities Alliance, working with a set of vanguard cities from across the world to promote sustainable development. You're linked up with the Global Resilient Cities Network through leaders like Josh, who spoke earlier, and sharing your experience through these networks like UCLG and SDSN, which are represented here today. And then lastly, I really want to commend the approach that you're taking and the first steps that I see to do this VLR. It's impressive to see multiple branches of government represented today, legislative and executive branch, county level, state level. And I think Hawaii is truly a leader, showcasing itself and engaging across these different levels. But I know that you're also engaging across lots of different levels of society. I spoke at the Sustainable Business Forum that Hawaii Green Growth helps to host, but engaging with the universities, which are helping host today, philanthropy, civil society, local businesses and utilities. Congressman Case mentioned public-private partnerships. And I think the VLR and the approach that you're taking to undertake this VLR presents an opportunity to organize collective impact across multiple partners and look at how all can contribute towards these similar objectives of sustainable development, which is made more urgent, frankly, from the impacts that many of us have spoken about today around the pandemic, yet offers opportunity. Like we talked about regenerative tourism and some of the other ideas that are already emerging. I think it's really important to understand that the VLR is much more than a report. It's a process, one that offers a platform for identifying and creating concrete actions to advance social and environmental progress. I'm excited by the approach that I see coming out from how you're thinking about the VLR to undertake that process, who and how to involve others in it, and to be concrete about what the actions are to be able to make that sort of progress. Thanks for having me here today. We'll continue to support you as you go forward in thinking through what that VLR exposes, what it identifies, the opportunities, both for action and for learning that we can exchange with others. And congratulations and best wishes as we move forward together. Thanks very much.
Mahalo, Tony, and I'll just thank you on behalf of all of our Hawaii partners and Pacific partners on the call that have been working so completely and with dedication on this over the years to get to this point that we're able to launch our first statewide local voluntary review. And actually, this now concludes the first part of our program, which was the Hawaii Voluntary Local Review Lab. Again, this is part of the broader conversation with our colleagues in the Pacific launching their voluntary national review and engaging their communities in doing so. So I'll now hand things back over to Josh Cooper to share more about the Pacific Island partnership and partner leadership. Aloha, Josh.
Aloha, Celeste. And I'd like to thank everyone so far this morning. Really, I appreciate Edgardo sharing about UCLG and initiatives. We see that taking off really in the Asia region, and it's good to put Pacific on the map. Also, Tony, I really think the point was so important, and we also bring that up in all the University of New South Wales diplomacy training program, that it is a process. In fact, it's a proactive participatory process that really allows people's voice to be heard and to be part of the solution. So I think that's absolutely essential as well. And today is putting SDG 17 into practice. It's peer partnerships across the Pacific, and we can see that now. And if we go back to where we were a year ago, it was the Blue HLPF. The Pacific Island Forum was really doing an amazing job at bringing, for the first time, up to 6 countries from Oceania to speak and to be able to make sure that the voice of the people was there. Another major part was the VLR was growing. We're meeting with Scotland. We had the first ever VLR lab at UNDP with Bristol, working with cities in Japan, making our links between Japan and Hawaii. And what was also significant, there were trainings in Oceania, in Fiji and Papua New Guinea with partners, as well as a civil society village at the Pacific Island Forum in Tuvalu. And also, as Maka shared from Maui, it was also a big year in 2019 with the UNDP Equator Prize, recognizing the indigenous knowledge in Hawaii. And we can really see how important that is and essential, really essential, as we navigate through this COVID crisis. 2015 was an important year. It really was the year that the Pacific was rising. It was a huge aspect with the 2030 agenda, as well as the Paris Agreement. And you saw the Pacific play a huge leadership role with the High Ambition Coalition at the Paris Agreement aiming for 1.5. And Hawaii doesn't forget our legacy in Oceania. Kalakaua had an idea of a Pan-Pacific regional mechanism where we work together in our common history and as well as our way forward with our values that are rooted in the Aina. And it reminds me to remember 2 distinct moments as well. Hokulea Malama Honua and NYC sailing past Lady Liberty. And I remember John DeFrace, who was on the call here as well, when he walked into the UN, it says, "We belong here." And that's absolutely true. And when the US withdrew from Paris, of course, not officially, it's after the election day, but Hawaii knows it's a life or death issue. And Hawaii led the way with We Are Still In. And since 2017, we host pre and post sessions to every UNFCCC and continue to partner with the Pacific nations in that process. And now we see that legacy continue with the first VLR here in Hawaii, with connection and coordination and continuing that among our islands. It really shows the place-based learning of the Pacific, and the point points out that we have the answers from our ancestors. And that was also raised with the example from Kauai, with one of the examples of the Kapuna Initiative. And that was when we have a crisis, it was how do we kako, how do we bring each other together to remember our kuleana. And that was an amazing thing where our kapuna were hurting. They weren't going to get their meals. Restaurants were not able to feed people. So it was people coming together to say, what can we do and how can we be creative? So let's make sure the restaurants are able to be open and bring food to our kapuna and make sure everyone can still continue as best as possible. Another small thing we did in Hawaii was we had our Stay Home, Stay Healthy, Strive for Human Rights, and HIF at Home. And for 17 nights from May 15, which was then going to be May 31st, our end of our lockdown, which we see we're doing more time together, we showed over 36 films, linking those to the Sustainable Development Goals and had different speakers. One of them will be Ambassador Amanda Ellis, talking about the links with Aloha Plus Challenge and the UN SDGs. And so now we're moving into the Pacific, and it's an honor to be able to really launch our process that will continue. We'll have this process for a half an hour where we'll show videos and have some speakers from Oceania. And then we'll meet together 6 hours later after the UN closes and we're all done with a busy day. Instead of going to the Delegates Lounge, we'll head over to one of the Pacific missions and gather around the Ava Bowl and have a Talanoa dialogue discussing the VNRs more in detail. When we look at what Samoa said, we look at what was important was raised in Solomon Islands, which will be happening very soon, Papua New Guinea, and Federated States of Micronesia. I would like to show our first video, and this was a video that was recorded at University of New South Wales, and it shows the people there coming together. It's all people of Papua New Guinea that were very concerned about unsustainable development and practices that were actually going in the wrong way of the 2030 agenda. And it was an amazing collection of people from all over Papua New Guinea. And while Oceania is unique and diverse, Papua New Guinea, of course, has over 100 different languages, but everyone has one language, and that's speaking the Sustainable Development Goals and human rights. And I'll hand that over to them now as our first video from Oceania.
Hello from Papua New Guinea, a land of great mystery and wonder, but also a land of rich culture and biodiversity. As a fact, our country is home to the world's third largest rainforest. As indigenous peoples, who we are is connected to these things, to the land, to the sea, to our resources, and our culture. These are things that have been protected for thousands of years by our ancestors and our forefathers. This land is sovereign. Please respect that the fact that more than 90% of the indigenous people of Papua New Guinea, we rely on the land and all our resources for our sustenance and our livelihood.
If you are seeking investment in our country, Papua New Guinea, do it with respect to the guiding principles on business and human rights, specifically Article 70. You must have human rights due diligence. Respect the rights of the indigenous people, their land, the resources on their land. Respect our culture. If you already have investment in our country, practice accountability. You are required under the state to do this and respect due diligence effectively.
So, because it is important and it is paramount that we protect the future of Papua New Guinea, we need our young people to understand who they are and find their identity in this world. And by doing your part, you're enabling us to maintain and ensure our future for our country.
As the sun is rising over Oceania, we can start with a little bit of song to help those with their also infusing caffeine. And that is really a voice of the people of Papua New Guinea after a week's training program, looking at the UN guiding principles on business and human rights, looking at the Sustainable Development Goals, as well as the international human rights mechanisms that Papua New Guinea has ratified. We now can move to Fiji. And we can then share the voice of the executive director there, the Center for Constitutional Forum, an amazing advocate. And Fiji, of course, did their first VNR last year and was really leading the way, as many of the UN agencies are all based in Fiji. You see the Office of High Commission for Human Rights, the World Health Organization, UNDP, and also the Pacific Island Forum. So we'd like to welcome Lucretia, and she'll also be joining us live in the second part of our event. But definitely, Lucretia, mahalo, and thank you for joining us.
Bula Vinaka, my name is Lucretia Hussein, and I am currently the Chief Executive Officer here at the Citizens Constitutional Forum, also known as the CCF. We are a non-governmental organization based out of Suva, Fiji, with over 20 years experience in community education and advocacy. Our mandate is human rights, the 2013 Fiji Constitution with emphasis on the Bill of Rights that features in our Constitution, democracy, and multiculturalism. Now, specifically within this COVID-19 context here in Fiji, an issue that we identified and tried to address as an organization is ensuring that local communities and Fiji citizens in general had access to credible and timely information. Now, this involved the CCF team sitting in on parliamentary sittings where policies were debated and also passed, but also ensuring that we tuned into, what the media was saying and official announcements made by the Prime Minister and also the Minister for Health. So whilst we, gathered this information, we sat as a team and tried to project this information in a very simple format so that it was easily understood by anyone who picked up the notice. So we ensured that these notices were also available in all the vernaculars and not just English. we were able to successfully put out notices on the nationwide curfew, restrictions around social gatherings, and also contact sports. And it's important that, people are aware of, decisions or policies that affect them. So this is something that we wanted to do and will continue to do as an organization under this COVID-19 context. In terms of support from our DTP alumni and international actors, I believe, just having a network, a solidarity network that supports the work that we do, amplifies the calls that we make for the state, to practice transparency and accountability, or whatever it may be. These networks are highly appreciated, and it really strengthens the voices and the calls that we make here in Fiji. So, Vinaka.
Thank you so much, Lucretia. I was in Fiji. The last visit that I did, I was on my way from New York to Fiji to Samoa. And when we landed on March 1st in Fiji, you still had the ukuleles and you had the wonderful bula welcome, but you also had the gun to check our temperatures. And some people got bula and got to go in, and some people didn't get bula and was kept out. And that was my last morning there. And I was able to walk into Nandi and meet with everyone and to coordinate that. Then we went over to Samoa, and before we go to Samoa and the Brown Girl Woke presentation, I want to share with us one more message from the Sepik River. And I know we had a couple of people joining us at dawn from Papua New Guinea, and I'm just not sure if it's the 83 number. If it is, please send a message, and then we'll definitely hand it over to you after this important video about the Sepik River and the campaign that was being organized to protect this sacred river that is really the life of the people. Mahalo. So really a powerful voice from the people of Papua New Guinea, and really challenging to make sure that sustainable development goals are more than a slogan, but really a way of life. And Indigenous peoples recognize that the sustainable development goals are rooted in human rights, and that 90% of the 17 SDGs are located and can be found in all the major human rights mechanisms. I would definitely like to share, if anyone from Papua New Guinea is on. If not, because I saw a couple people earlier, but I think they went back to bed since it was 4 a.m. We want to go to Samoa. And we mentioned Samoa earlier because it was very youth-led. In Samoa, they were very innovative. In fact, one of their chief justices, Justice Vui Nelson, who was actually a descendant of Taisi O.F. Nelson, who actually led the campaign, not at the United Nations, but at the League of Nations in 1928, going to Geneva to speak for self-determination and self-reliance for Samoa back then. You can see that he has not forgotten his history. And Chief Justice Nelson was able to convince, for the first time ever, a UN Human Rights Treaty buddy, one of the core 9, in this case, the Committee on the Rights of the Child, and he's the only member of the Pacific on a UN Human Rights Treaty body, to meet outside of the Palais Wilson in Geneva and bring the meeting to Samoa. So from March 1st through 7th, it really shows the Pacific leading the way. You actually had Triple RT, you had the Committee on the Rights of the Child, you had UNDP, UNICEF, all partnering together, and they've reviewed 4 Pacific Island countries, which was the first time ever, and they didn't have to do a video message. They're able to be there live. And more importantly, and this is where we'll head towards the end of our program, it was the keiki, the children who were involved. Over 100 children attended the entire week. They also had a Talanoa dialogue like we'll have later today when we'll gather around the Ava Bowl. And those 100 youth actually were moderators and participated throughout the entire time in the process and had frank, candid dialogues about really a good partnership was also with the Asian Development Bank around climate justice. And they brought civil society from all of the Pacific Islands to come and speak and meet directly with the CRC members. And CRC is also important because Greta Thunberg was one of the 5 youth that brought an optional protocol case regarding future generations under the CRC for climate justice. So Samoa was a very exciting place for all those reasons. We're going to just give you a small taste of that. Brown Girl Woke performed on the closing aspect, and they could not, of course, gather at 6 a.m. to be able to make and dance for us all. But the good news is they did have a measles breakout, but they've been able to contain that. And since I was there, they've had very low cases of COVID and everyone's still gathering. So they're able to gather safely and do a couple rehearsals for us on an important issue of bullying and also talking about children's rights in Oceania. So we'll play now this song and you're going to love the dance. And if you have to dance this morning, we understand. Just get up and follow the small one on the right side in all black. He's got the best moves. So thank you so much. And we now go to Brown Girl Woke.
When darkness seems to win, where are you now? When the world is crumbling, oh, I hear you say, look up, child. Hey. Look up, child.
That concludes our performance for today. In case anyone forgot, we are Brown Girl Woke. Thank you for everything, and have a good afternoon. Thank you.
All right, so now everybody's blood's flowing and we're good and getting ready to dance. That's kind of important. What we'll do now then is we'll come back to Hawaii for just a brief moment before we go back to the Pacific at 7. We just will highlight a couple of points since we don't see any of our other partners from the Pacific on right now. And it's really sharing how youth can lead. And I think that was the exciting point there about what happened in the Brown Girl Woke and also at the CRC. In Hawaii, as soon as it was adopted, we definitely came home and began to share the Sustainable Development Goals together and discuss what could be done and how we could move forward. But we also know, as you can see by their dance moves, we all move and speak in a different way, but dance and music and really video is the new language for everyone to connect. And we worked with Iolani and with Waipahu, and we made 17 Voices for a New Future. And there are 17 SDG short videos, and we're not going to show all of them. But at minute point 208, we have global goal number 2 that looks at ending hunger. And that's a pretty amazing one that we could show, as well as another amazing one that looked at goal 13 and 14. That's more at minute 22. So if those are set up, we can show that. And then we can also feature one important aspect that we've done as well with Hano, who's another partner. We actually matched up all of our NGOs in Hawaii with which goal they focus on. And so you can look at that on our website and look at each NGO and see what goal they work on, or you can look at which goal you care about and then see which NGOs all partner on that. So that was a great technique that we did. And by doing that, we know a lot of VLRs, but also VNRs. We're like, we haven't even done that survey of who we have and what resources we have. In a way, really, who and cares about our life forces and who uses those in where we live. And since 2017, we've also done a Human Rights Summer Academy, where we work with Pacific Asian Affairs Council and educate high school and college students every summer for a week-long program. And since 2017, we've been doing the Lo'ikalo to the UN. That was a great event to highlight that we are still in November, right after the 2017 Bonn Pacific one that was hosted by Fiji, but in Bonn. And then, of course, 2019 was the Impact Hub event. That was great with entrepreneurs looking at ecology, economy, and focusing on equality. And of course, 2020 is huge. We just had our Hawaii VLR lab at the HNLPF. We did voluntary local review youth surveys from high schools and colleges students, giving excellent examples, current challenges, simple steps to combat those challenges, and scalable solutions. And we'll premiere today an exciting thing. It kind of combines John Cruz island style with John Osorio's Hawaiian eyes. So instead of localizing, we islandize the Aloha Plus Challenge with the SDGs. And we had students prepare our local version of the Sustainable Development Goal logos we'll share. So we'll show the video real quick from the SDGs at 208 to look at goal number 2. These were all made by you. exciting front, when the SDGs were actually adopted in 2015, we knew it was the best way to communicate, not for Celeste and I to go running around all elementary and high schools, although we do that a lot. We just did a SDG process in Iroquois Point with second graders who were going to solve SDG 2 within 2 months earlier this year. And on an exciting front, they did all 17. So it's a great tool to be able to share. And we also, if anyone wants to use that, we have that here. And we're going to just show another one, although all 17 are great. The other one was looking later on at more of the environmental issues and does a great aspect there. And we'll continue with that video right there, looking at goal 13. So those are just 2 of the 17 videos. And in a way that wraps up that portion. We do have one more thing we'd like to premiere. And this was created just by students in the last month based on the Human Rights Summer Academy. And they actually created what we talked about of the Island Eyes of the Aloha Plus Challenge and looking at the 17 SDGs. So we'll be able to premiere and share that. But really the work is just beginning. And as it was pointed out, it's a process. And what's important about this process is that we continue to participate, we continue to share ideas with one another, and then we mobilize to make sure that the Aloha Plus dashboard moves into direct action and we can see how we can make a difference. But it's been amazing to be with everyone this morning. There's a whole lot of activities that will still go on. We have a global goal 18 contest of what should goal 18 be in Hawaii, looking at like Aloha Plus ambassadors with 17 agents of positive change in the Pacific, and looking as well of how we can transform tourism. That was really brought up very well by Kalani. And we had students in one class that actually came up with a point system so everybody would be able to move towards the SDGs with each action each hotel could take. So we can share that with you as well. But if Ariana can share that one logo that we sent, and if not, I can try to pull it up. There we go. Ta-da! So now we have it, the premiere. You see no poverty. You see the leis and the hibiscus, of course, the Hawaii hibiscus. The zero hunger, you see the ahupua'a. You see the fish pond, you see the fish there, as well as the lo'i on the land side. You have good health and well-being. We can hike up Leahi. Quality education, more of the oral tradition with the stars. Gender equality 5, which Ambassador Amanda Ellis will share later. Clean water and sanitation, looks like the Kolaus. Some people get that beautiful view when they ride home. 7, you see the affordable and clean energy. We definitely have our poi pounder there for decent work and economic growth with Pai. We got industry innovation infrastructure. That's the bus, which I was able to ride from Waianae every day to UH. Reduced inequalities, featuring our Queen Lilio Kalani. Sustainable cities, we have the legislature, which Kalani shared with us today. Responsible consumption and products, we have the amazing tea leaf lei that we always make through our toes. climate action, honoring Hokulea. You see her there going across with the message of Malama Honua. Life below water, much better than that goldfish they have for the UN. We've got the Humu Humu Nuku Nuku Apua'a, plus Ohonu and Molokini, life on land, of close, the elder brother of all of us here. We have peace, justice, and strong institutions, and then 17 partnership for the goals. All of our hands are in, and we look forward to always coming together as Celeste said, shoulder to shoulder, and putting our hands together to make Hawaii and Oceania a better place. And we'd like to thank everyone, all of our partners today, for joining. And if you can, enjoy the morning, maybe go out and get a surf in, and then come back at 7 o'clock. We'll meet around the Ava Bowl, and we'll have a Talanoa session with our partners from Oceania. So it's a two-part process. We thought it wasn't fair for them to have to do everything at 3, and it's exciting. We'll be able to hear more from the people and build on the videos that were shared from the Pacific. So thank you again, everyone. We really appreciate everyone's work, not only today, but as you know, and as Celeste pointed out, with Aloha Plus, it's 365 days a year, 7 days a week. And we've had many meetings just to come up with that. And it's an honor to participate and be able to make sure Hawaii continues its legacy, building on Kalakawa's vision of a Pan-Pacific perspective, and to participate and bring in the VLR. We know we can share that with Rapa Nui, as well as with New Caledonia and other countries that maybe the VNR wasn't as strong as they had wanted, and we'll do that. So today will be Solomon Islands doing their voluntary national review, and we look forward to seeing everyone in September at the UN General Assembly 75. We'll have our theme of building back better in balance and in beauty. And mahalo nui, and thank you everyone again today. We hope.